Oliver's shoes were too shiny. They hurt his feet. He wanted to take them off, but his father said no. Tonight was important. Tonight was special. Tonight, everything would change. The big hall looked like a palace from his storybooks. Gold covered the walls like butter on bread. The floor was so clean Oliver could see his face in it. A giant light hung from the ceiling, covered in 1,000 tiny pieces of glass that sparkled like stars. Oliver counted them sometimes when he couldn't sleep. 1, 2, 3, 4. But tonight he wasn't counting. Tonight his tummy felt funny, like butterflies were fighting inside. His father, Richard Graves, stood tall in the center of the room. He wore a black suit that made him look like a king. His hair was perfect. His smile was perfect. Everything about his father was always perfect. Except for one thing. His father didn't know how to hug. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard's voice boomed across the hall. Oliver jumped a little. "Thank you for coming to our home tonight." Around the room, people in fancy clothes smiled and clapped. Oliver didn't know most of them. They came to his house sometimes, but they never talked to him. They just looked at him like he was a painting on the wall. "As you know," Richard continued, "Oliver's nanny is leaving us. She's moving to another country. And so, my son needs someone new. Someone who can guide him. Someone who can be—" He paused. "A mother." The room went quiet. So quiet Oliver could hear his own heart beating. Thump, thump, thump. Two women stepped forward. They looked like princesses. The first woman had hair like sunshine. It fell down her back in perfect waves. Her dress was red, the color of roses, and it sparkled when she moved. She smiled at Oliver, showing teeth, so white they looked like little pearls. Her name was Victoria, someone whispered. The second woman had dark hair pulled up high on her head. Her dress was blue like the ocean, with tiny diamonds sewn into it. She was very tall, even without her high shoes. When she looked at Oliver, her eyes were bright green, like emeralds. Her name was Isabel. Both women were beautiful. Both women looked expensive. Both women looked like they belonged in this golden room. "Oliver," his father said, putting a hand on his shoulder. The hand felt heavy. "These two lovely ladies have agreed to help us. One of them would like to be part of our family, to be your new mother." Oliver's throat felt tight. "You're a big boy now," Richard said. 6 years old. Old enough to choose. "So, tonight, you will decide. Victoria or Isabel. Which one will be your mother?" The butterfly fight in Oliver's tummy got worse. Victoria knelt down. Her dress made a sound like wind through leaves. "Hello, Oliver," she said. Her voice was sweet, like candy. "I would love to take you to wonderful places. We could go to Paris. To Italy. I could teach you about art and music. Would you like that?" Oliver said nothing. Isabel knelt down too. "And I," she said, her voice smooth like honey, "could give you everything. The best schools. The best teachers. You would grow up to be just like your father. Strong. Powerful. Important." Oliver looked at Victoria. Then at Isabel. Then at the floor. His father was waiting. Everyone was waiting. Oliver. Richard's voice had an edge to it now, like a knife hidden in a smile. "Choose." Oliver's hands were shaking. He didn't want Victoria. He didn't want Isabel. They smelled like flowers that weren't real. They smiled with their mouths, but not their eyes. They didn't know him. They didn't know that he was afraid of thunder. They didn't know that he liked to eat his sandwiches with the crusts cut off. They didn't know that he still slept with his blue rabbit, even though he was 6 now. Oliver's voice was tiny. "I choose." He turned around. Standing by the wall, almost hidden in the shadows, was Grace. Grace wore a simple black dress. Not fancy. Not sparkly. Just plain. Her skin was dark, like the chocolate his nanny used to give him. Her hair was pulled back in a small bun. She held a tray in her hands, ready to serve drinks if anyone asked. Grace didn't look like a princess. Grace looked like home. "I choose her," Oliver said, pointing. "I choose Grace." The room exploded with gasps. Victoria's mouth dropped open. Isabel stood up so fast her dress made a ripping sound. People began to whisper. Loud whispers that buzzed like angry bees. Richard's face turned red, then white, then red again. Oliver, he said through his teeth. That's not one of the choices. That's the maid. I choose Grace, Oliver said again, louder this time. His heart was beating so fast now it felt like it might jump out of his chest. But he didn't look away. He kept pointing at Grace. Grace's eyes went wide. The tray in her hands started to shake. Glasses wobbled. One almost fell. Oliver, stop this nonsense, Richard hissed. Choose. Victoria or Isabel. Now. But Oliver was already moving. His shiny shoes clicked across the marble floor. Click, click, click. He walked past Victoria, past Isabel, past all the people in their fancy clothes. He walked straight to Grace. When he reached her, he grabbed her hand. It was warm. It was soft. It smelled like the lavender soap she used. Please, Oliver whispered, looking up at her. Please be my mother. Grace's eyes filled with tears. The tray slipped from her hands and crashed to the floor. Everyone in the golden hall stared. And Oliver held on tight. Grace's knees hit the floor. She didn't care about the broken glass around her. She didn't care about the people staring. All she could see was Oliver's face, his big brown eyes looking up at her. Hoping. Waiting. Oliver, sweetie, Grace whispered. Her voice was shaking. I can't. Why not? Oliver asked. A tear rolled down his cheek. Don't you love me? Grace's heart broke into a million pieces. Of course I love you, she said. She reached out and touched his face, very gently. I love you more than anything in this whole world. Then why can't you be my mother? Grace opened her mouth, but no words came out. How could she explain? How could she tell this little boy that the world didn't work the way his heart did? That people would talk. That his father would never allow it. That she was just a maid, and maids didn't become mothers. Enough. Richard's voice cut through the room like thunder. He marched over to them. His fancy shoes made angry sounds on the marble floor. Crack, crack, crack. When he reached Oliver, he grabbed the boy's arm and pulled him away from Grace. Let go of her, Richard said. His face was still red. A vein in his forehead looked like it might pop. This is embarrassing, Oliver. You're making a fool of yourself. Of me. Of our family. But she's my family, Oliver cried. He tried to pull away, but his father held tight. She's the maid, Richard shouted. People gasped again. She cleans. She serves. She works for us. That's all. Grace stood up slowly. Her legs felt like jelly. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear. But Oliver was looking at her, and she couldn't leave him. Not now. Mr. Graves, Grace said softly. Please. Don't be angry at Oliver. He's just a little boy. Stay out of this, Richard snapped. This is between me and my son. But Oliver wasn't listening anymore. He wrenched his arm free from his father's grip and ran back to Grace. He wrapped his arms around her waist and buried his face in her dress. She's the one who tucks me in at night, Oliver said, his voice muffled. She's the one who reads me stories. She's the one who checks for monsters under my bed. Richard crossed his arms. That's her job. She's the one who sat with me when I was sick, Oliver continued. His voice got louder. Braver. Remember when I had that bad fever? When I was so hot I couldn't stop shaking? Where were you, father? Richard's mouth opened, then closed. You were at a meeting, Oliver said. You were always at a meeting. But Grace stayed with me. All night. She put cold towels on my head. She held my hand. She sang to me until I fell asleep. Grace's eyes filled with more tears. She remembered that night. Oliver had been so sick, so scared. She'd been scared too, but she stayed. Of course she stayed. And remember when I fell off my bike? Oliver went on. When I scraped my knee so bad it bled everywhere. Grace carried me inside. She cleaned it. She put a bandage on it. She kissed it better. Oliver, Richard started. And remember my birthday? Oliver's voice cracked. When you forgot. When you didn't come home because you had to have dinner with important people? The room went very, very quiet. Richard's face changed. The red color drained away. He looked small. Smaller than Oliver had ever seen him. Grace baked me a cake, Oliver said. Chocolate. My favorite. She put 6 candles on it. She sang happy birthday to me. Just her. Just us. And she gave me a present. A stuffed bear. She saved her money for it. She said every boy needs a bear. Grace covered her mouth with her hand. She was crying now. Really crying. I still sleep with that bear, Oliver said. Every single night. Victoria and Isabel were backing away slowly. They looked at each other. This wasn't what they signed up for. This wasn't glamorous or fun. This was real. Too real. I think we should go, Victoria whispered to Isabel. Yes, Isabel agreed. This family, they have things to work out. The 2 models walked toward the door. Their fancy dresses swished. Their high heels clicked. And then they were gone. The other guests followed. 1 by 1. 2 by 2. Until the golden hall was almost empty. Just Richard, Oliver, and Grace. Richard stood there, frozen. He looked at his son. Really looked at him. At his tear-stained face. At his wrinkled tuxedo. At his messy hair. When was the last time he'd really seen Oliver? When was the last time he'd asked about his day? When was the last time he'd read him a story? Richard couldn't remember. Oliver, Richard said. His voice was different now. Quieter. Softer. I didn't know. You never asked, Oliver said simply. And that was the truth. Richard walked to a chair and sat down. He put his head in his hands. For a long time, no one spoke. Grace stood there, holding Oliver close. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to say. So she just waited. Finally, Richard looked up. Tell me, he said to Grace. His eyes were red. Tell me about my son. Tell me everything I've missed. Grace's heart squeezed tight. And slowly, carefully, she began to talk. She told him about Oliver's favorite color. Blue. Like the sky. She told him about Oliver's favorite food. Pancakes with syrup and strawberries. She told him about the way Oliver laughed when he played with the dog next door. She told him about Oliver's dreams. He wanted to be an astronaut. He wanted to touch the stars. She told him about Oliver's fears. The dark. Loud noises. Being alone. She told him everything. And Richard listened. For the first time in a very long time, Richard Graves listened. When Grace finished talking, the hall was dark. Night had fallen outside the big windows. The stars were coming out. Oliver yawned. It was past his bedtime. Grace, Richard said. May I ask you something? Grace nodded. Why do you do it? Richard asked. Why do you care so much? You're paid to clean. To serve. Not to love him. Grace looked down at Oliver. He was falling asleep against her, his eyes drooping. You can't pay someone to love a child, Grace said softly. Love just happens. And Oliver, he's easy to love. Richard's eyes filled with tears. And for the first time, Oliver saw his father cry. Richard wiped his eyes quickly. He wasn't used to crying. Big, important men didn't cry. That's what his own father had told him long ago. But tonight, the tears came anyway. I've been a terrible father, Richard said. The words hurt coming out, like swallowing broken glass. No, Oliver said sleepily. You're not terrible. You're just busy. That's not an excuse, Richard said. He stood up and walked over to them. Slowly, carefully, like he was afraid they might disappear. Oliver, I'm so sorry. I thought being a good father meant giving you things. A big house. Fancy toys. The best schools. I thought money could buy everything. It can't buy hugs, Oliver said. Richard's heart cracked a little more. No, he agreed. It can't. He knelt down in front of Grace and Oliver. His expensive pants touched the floor, where the glass had broken. He didn't care. Grace, Richard said. I need to ask you something important. Grace's breath caught in her throat. Sir? Don't call me sir. Not anymore. Richard looked right into her eyes. I asked Oliver to choose a mother tonight. But I was wrong. I wasn't really asking him to choose someone to love him. I was asking him to choose someone who looked right. Someone who fit into my world, my image, my life. He reached out and took Oliver's hand. Then, very carefully, he took Grace's hand too. But you, Richard said to Grace, you already are his mother. In every way that matters. You've been his mother for years, and I was too blind to see it. Grace shook her head. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Mr. Graves, You're just the woman who raised my son, Richard interrupted gently. While I was building my business, you were building his character. While I was making money, you were making memories. While I was chasing success, you were giving him something more valuable than anything I could buy. What's that? Oliver asked. Richard smiled. A real smile this time. Love. Pure, simple, honest love. Grace couldn't stop crying now. Her whole body shook with tears. Happy tears. Sad tears. Scared tears. All mixed together. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll stay, Richard said. Not as a maid. Not as hired help. Stay as family. As Oliver's mother. As someone I hope will teach me how to be a better father. Oliver's eyes went wide. Really? Grace can really be my mother? If she wants to, Richard said. But Grace, I need you to understand something. This won't be easy. People will talk. People will judge. Some of them will be cruel. They'll say terrible things because... He paused. Because you're black and we're white. Because you were our maid. Because it doesn't look like what they think a family should look like. Grace nodded slowly. She knew. Of course she knew. She'd worked in this house for 5 years. She'd heard the whispers. She'd felt the stares. I can't promise it will be simple, Richard continued. But I can promise you this. You will be respected in this house. You will have a voice. You will be heard. And anyone who disrespects you will answer to me. And me. Oliver piped up. I'll protect you too, Grace. I'm strong. He made a muscle with his little arm. It was tiny. Adorable. Grace laughed through her tears. I know you are, baby, she said softly. Richard stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the night. The stars were bright. The moon was full. Everything looked peaceful out there. Come. When I lost Oliver's mother, Richard said quietly, I lost myself too. She died when he was just a baby. Too young to remember her. And I couldn't handle it. The grief. The pain. So I buried myself in work. I threw myself into making money, building an empire, being successful. I thought that's what she would have wanted. He turned back to face them. But I was wrong. She would have wanted me to be here. To be present. To be a father. His voice broke. And she would have loved you, Grace. She would have been grateful. So grateful that someone with a good heart was caring for our son. Grace's chin trembled. I wish I could have met her. So do I, Richard said. But in a way, maybe she sent you to us. Maybe she knew Oliver needed you. Maybe she knew I needed you too. The room felt warm now. Safe. Like all the gold and marble and fancy things didn't matter anymore. Like the only thing that mattered was the 3 people standing there. Grace, Oliver said, tugging on her dress. Please say yes. Please be my mother. I promise I'll be good. I'll clean my room. I'll eat my vegetables. I'll go to bed on time. Sure, Grace said, kneeling down to his level. She cupped his face in her hands. You don't have to promise me anything. You're already perfect just the way you are. So, is that a yes? Oliver asked hopefully. Grace looked at Richard. He was waiting. Hoping. Just like his son. Could she do this? Could she step into this role? It was terrifying. Everything would change. Her life would never be the same. But then again, when had her life ever been easy? She'd grown up poor. She'd worked hard for everything. She'd faced rejection and prejudice and closed doors. She'd survived. And she'd loved Oliver since the day she met him. From the moment she walked into this golden mansion and saw that tiny, lonely boy, she'd known. She'd known he needed her. And she needed him. I need time, Grace said finally. This is big. Really big. I need to think. I need to pray. I need to be sure. Oliver's face fell a little. But then he nodded. Okay. That's fair. Richard nodded too. Take all the time you need. There's no rush. Well. He smiled. Oliver might disagree. But I'll keep him patient. Can you still tuck me in tonight? Oliver asked Grace. While you think. Grace smiled. Of course I can. And read me a story? Always. And check for monsters? Every single one. Oliver threw his arms around her neck. I love you, Grace. I love you too, sweet boy, Grace whispered into his hair. More than you'll ever know. She picked him up, even though he was getting big. Even though her back ached. Even though her arms were tired. She carried him toward the stairs. Richard watched them go. His son, and the woman who'd saved him. The woman who'd saved them both. Grace. Richard called out. She paused and turned. Thank you, Richard said simply. For everything. For all the things I never thanked you for. For all the moments I missed. For loving him when I forgot how. Grace's eyes softened. You didn't forget, Mr. Graves. You just got lost for a while. But you're finding your way back. And with that, she carried Oliver up the grand staircase. His head rested on her shoulder. His eyes were already closing. Richard stood alone in the golden hall. It felt different now. Less like a palace and more like a house. A house that might finally become a home. He walked to the window again. Outside, the world was dark. But inside, something bright was beginning to grow. Hope. 3 weeks later, Grace gave her answer. It was a Tuesday morning. Oliver was eating pancakes at the kitchen table. Richard was reading the newspaper. Grace was pouring orange juice. I've decided, Grace said quietly. Oliver dropped his fork. Richard put down his paper. Yes, Grace said. My answer is yes. I'll stay. As family. Oliver screamed with joy. He jumped out of his chair and ran to her, syrup still on his face. He hugged her so hard she almost fell over. Richard stood up. He walked to Grace and did something he'd never done before. He hugged her too. Welcome home, he whispered. I've been home for a while, Grace said, smiling through tears. I just didn't know it yet. And from that day forward, everything changed. The mansion became warmer. Softer. Filled with laughter and cooking smells and bedtime stories. Richard came home earlier. He had dinner with Oliver. He asked about school. He played games. He learned how to give hugs. Grace became more than a mother to Oliver. She became a teacher to Richard. She showed him how to slow down, how to notice the small things, how to be present. And Oliver? Oliver bloomed like a flower in sunshine. He smiled more. He laughed more. He felt safe. He felt loved. People did talk, just like Richard said they would. Some of the fancy friends stopped calling. Some of the business partners raised their eyebrows. Some people whispered behind their backs. But the Graves family didn't care. Because they had something more valuable than approval. They had each other. One night, many months later, Richard tucked Oliver into bed. Grace stood in the doorway, watching. Dad. Oliver said sleepily. Yes, son? I'm glad I chose Grace. So am I, Richard said. You taught me something that night, Oliver. Something important. What's that? That the heart knows things the head doesn't. That love doesn't look at skin color or job titles or bank accounts. Love just sees people. Real people. And the people worth keeping close are the ones who show up. Who stay. Who care. Oliver smiled. Grace always stays. Yes, Richard said, glancing at Grace. She does. Grace walked into the room. She kissed Oliver's forehead. Good night, my sweet boy. Good night, Mom, Oliver whispered. Mom. The word hung in the air, like music. Grace's eyes filled with happy tears. She'd heard him say it before, but it never got old. Every time felt like a gift. Richard and Grace walked out together, leaving the door cracked open so the hallway light could shine in. Oliver didn't like the dark. They stood in the hallway, both of them tired but content. "Thank you," Richard said, "for saying yes, for taking a chance on us." "You took a chance on me too," Grace replied. "You let go of what people think. That's not easy for someone like you." "Someone like me needed to change," Richard said. "And you showed me how." They walked downstairs together. The house was quiet, peaceful, perfect. This was family. Not because of blood. Not because of tradition. Not because of what any rulebook said. But because of choice. Because of love. Because of courage. And as the night settled softly over the Graves' home, 3 hearts beat as one. A father who learned to be present. A son who taught him how. And a woman whose quiet strength had saved them both. This is where their story begins. If you enjoyed this story of love, courage, and what it truly means to be a family, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories that touch the soul. Leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from, and share what family means to you. Remember, family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, and who loves you without conditions. Stay kind, stay curious, and keep listening for the quiet voices that guide our hearts. Until next time.